So profits is extremely important at the moment. We've always been obsessed with customer centricity. This is our DNA, and we cannot deviate from it. And we learned it over like so many times that every fuck up we do in Vipps MobilePay is because we haven't stayed true to simplicity and actually doing everyday simplification for people. We launched a telecom subscription a couple of years ago. We failed massively. Like, was it simpler and better than competition? Absolutely not.
Hey there, welcome back. My guest today is Ninni Høver, Head of Product at Vipps MobilePay, a mobile payment tech giant in the Nordics. This conversation is part of my series of talks with more than 20 product leaders in Scandinavia. Make sure you subscribe to my newsletter so you don't miss out. This episode is packed with lessons learned from both scaling and going through a large merger. I don't know a single Norwegian who doesn't use Vipps. So how does Ninni's team decide what to build? How do they balance priorities between different markets? What has changed in her leadership style before and after the merger with MobilePay? We cover all of this and so much more. I think Ninni is a really special product leader and a great human being, and I hope you enjoy this chat as much as I did. So without further ado, Ninni Høver. If you don't have plans for June yet, you should attend Product at Heart, possibly the best product conference in Europe. Marty Kagan, Elena Werner, Henrik Nieberg, you name it. You really don't want to miss this one out. I'm going to be there as a speaker as well, and I have a very special talk prepared for you. It's an amazing opportunity to upskill your teams and send them to a proper product and growth conference. And no, this is not a paid endorsement, by the way. I genuinely think that this is one of the very best conferences in the world for product people, and you should go. Get your tickets, Product at Heart. Okay, Ninni, we are live. Welcome to Scandinavian Product Podcast. So good to see you again.
Thank you so much, Afonso. Really good to be here today.
It's great. I'm so excited for this conversation. You have so much wisdom to share, and you've been through a lot of great experience with Vipps right now. A big journey that you're in. So I want to jump straight into it. You are head of product at Vipps MobilePay, and Vipps has been through quite a journey for people listening that might not be aware of it. So let's just set the scene. Maybe you can give us a little context on what has happened to Vipps and then Vipps MobilePay. What is this all about? Tell us a little bit more about what happened last year and the journey so far.
Of course I can. Just to start up with the fact that we don't have a CPO role today, I am head of product, but I'm officially head of product for one of our product areas in Vipps MobilePay. We don't, and that we can touch upon it later in terms of product organization, but that gives some possibilities and also some challenges in not having that one product CPO role. Yeah. But I've been with Vipps for 6 years now, which is in Vipps history quite many years, because we as an organization, we were established we were born as a project in the DNB Bank. And we were launched in 2015 and then became an independent organization some years, I think it was in 2018. So us as an organization and as a company is actually not that old. And so we've grown. When I started, we were around 40 people, I think, and now we are close to 600. So if you compare to the global giants, we're a small company, but for us, we're getting bigger and bigger. And the biggest change was now 2 years ago when we got the approval from EU to merge with the Danish equivalent of Vipps, which is called MobilePay. We merged companies, and then we went from 300 to 600. A fantastic privilege in many ways, but also caused some challenges.
And I'm looking forward to dig into some of those challenges and also like some of the strategies you came up with to address them. So now you're close to 12 million users, something like that?
Yes.
Nice.
We just passed 12 million users actually.
Awesome.
Across Denmark, Finland, Norway, and recently we entered Sweden. taking up competition in one way with the Swedish app called Swish. But our main value proposition in Sweden now is not P2P friend payments, because Swish has that covered already, but it's we do cross-border payments. So now you can, with our app, you can send money between the different Nordic countries.
Interesting. Nice. I didn't know that. Okay, so you went from a few million to 12 million users after the merger, from one country to 4 countries,
Yes.
if I understood it correctly.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, as any other merger, there's a lot going on from a change perspective in the organization. And you, as a head of product, I want to dig into those changes. So let's just start with overall your approach and maybe even role as a head of product. How did that evolve before and after the merge, considering all the big changes, both from a market perspective, but also like new types of customers, and of course a much larger pool of users?
We did, when we reorganized after the merger, we decided on the model where we would do cross-market teams. So you, as a product lead or PM or a tech lead for that matter, you are responsible for the product for each of the 4 different markets. So we don't do local teams. Or when that's said, we try to organize or co-locate team members so they have the opportunity to go to the office and see your team members. But that's not always possible. It depends on the competence and everything. But as a principle, and from a product perspective, or product lead perspective, you are responsible for the product across the market. That is causing some challenges. It means that you have to know how Finns, Swedes, Norwegian, and Danes are behaving similarly but also differently, right?
Yeah.
And we've learned a lot from these last 2 years how the Scandinavians and Scandis and Nordic people are different. So let me do an example. So in Denmark and Norway, Vipps mobile wallet, mobile payment, we have done in all modesty, great success. Like for core product, we more or less, the whole population in Denmark and Norway has downloaded the app, are using it frequently. We have almost everyone is visiting our app weekly. And we have applied the same recipe, starting with friend payments, then moving into all different payment situations as bill payments, e-commerce, paying with Vipps and paying with their app in e-commerce. And now recently launching tap to pay, you can tap in a physical store. So what we did years back, and it started on the Danish MobilePay side, they launched in Finland, applying the same recipe, exactly the same product, exactly the same brand as in Denmark, and then it turned out completely different. So Finns turned out to be a lot more, they didn't know the brand. The brand didn't have that trust. What we learn now is that they care a lot more about security, data or privacy, and they prefer, and the competitive landscape in Finland is also completely different. So it turned out in Finland, they actually have a pretty smooth payment alternative because they have something called bank buttons. So all the banks in Finland, they have this button in e-commerce stores. It's like one click and pay with your bank. And then the value proposition of our app, which is smooth mobile payment, it's not the same value anymore.
Yeah.
So as you understand, and probably know from before that the markets are different. Yeah. When that's said, the privilege of being a product lead, running a project across markets, is that first of all, you have access to extremely much insights, and you have the possibility the impact you have is enormous, right? So we just launched a new service before Christmas, and we launched it to 12. We pushed one button and we rolled it out to 12 million users. And we're originally a small Norwegian company that it was launched in 2015.
Yeah.
And that's just an insane feeling, I must say. Yeah.
So cool to hear. And so let's double click on something you said. The countries are different, and the way you're organizing now is that you have a product lead or a product team focused on each product across different markets instead of a different model, which would be different people owning different markets. And you mentioned that brings a challenge because you need to understand the different markets really, really well. And you touched on just pure cultural differences, the brand trust, which I think is a very important element there, but also the competitive landscape. So how did you, if I can ask, how did you go about understanding what those differences were? Did you was this a big initiative to go to those countries and do a more rigorous user research sort of project, or was it more on the fly and taking the expertise for the MobilePay team or people? How did that come about?
To be honest, I think we underestimated the time needed to do that, and the effort it requires from the company to really not apply the same recipe for all, to really understand the market and to really develop custom solutions if needed. I'm not even sure if we have spent that enough resources. To be honest, we haven't won Finland. I mentioned Finland as a case. We haven't cracked the code yet. So we have a lot of learnings to do, and I think we are getting better at it. But I think actually this merger, we were lucky in the sense that these products were already launched in 4 different countries. So it's more so. We didn't start off from scratch. We weren't launching or actually Sweden was a new market for us, and we actually did quite a lot of insights in terms of whether or not we thought we could win or at least succeed in the Swedish market with having that very strong competitor on the P2P side, on the friend payment side. And then we investigated that actually the amount of transaction going across the countries is quite substantial. So then we iterated we iterated the product, but also how we conceptualized and how we entered the Swedish market was through that cross-border angle.
Right.
So we adapted, but yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so then with the merger, you mentioned these products were already established in the different countries, except from Sweden, if I understood correctly. And I think that was a good context to add. So thanks for doing that, Ninni. So I'm wondering, when the merger happened, and this goes across many other mergers, there's always there's typically this us versus them feeling in the beginning, and there has to be trust has to be developed from the early days, and leaders take a big role in that. And there's a lot of there might be different ways of working, there might be some cultural differences in how the team works. Can you walk us through a little bit how it was for you as a leader to mitigate that risk and build trust from the beginning, especially considering the fact that the product people own one product across markets, and that's just how you were organized now?
I think it's a really good question, and I think that is you should not underestimate the cultural aspect of a merger either. And I think it's 2 years now since we did the merger, and it's still I think I can be transparent about us there is still differences between the countries, and I think sometimes we're still talking about me and them, but what I think we have done something right, and it's to, we touched upon it, co-organized teams. We try to be transparent in our communication. We have frequent touch points and cross-country meetings, and these maybe more, I think a lot of theory supports this. It's like the more you communicate and the more you share, the stronger is, or the more likely it is that you merge into one culture. I think it was extremely challenging for us in Vipps because we had this very informal culture in the office where, to be honest, I think a lot of decisions at some points were taken by the coffee machine in a physical context.
Yeah.
And going from that to have a bit more structure in decision making, have a bit more structure in documentation, and a bit more structure in how you are transparent with your work. Doing more status updates. We've become extremely much better at that. With open channels in Slack, and actually sharing openly what you do, so everyone can follow what you're working on.
Yeah, this resonates a lot.
And at the end of the day, what I learned myself, maybe as a leader, was that it takes time and to get to know each other, because trust is a lot about getting to know each other's strengths and weaknesses and our differences. And we had some differences between the organization. So it wasn't like, and we are laughing a bit about it now, but it was like the old Vipps was like this very cowboy-oriented way of working, like extremely high risk appetite, extremely low time to decision making, went really fast. And an extremely agile approach to things. Whether MobilePay has, in at least traditionally, been maybe less agile, a bit more thorough, which can be good when you run when you work in fintech, right? Like we are regulated company, so sometimes it's actually good with a bit of structure and documentation. Yeah. So, but I think it sounds a cliche, but acknowledges that you are different, and then over time merge together. I think it's important.
I think this resonates a lot, and it's a great point. I think every company that grows from more local to international and experiences hyper growth, both from a people perspective, but also from a market demand perspective, every company experiences this turning point where all of a sudden is not enough to run things in an unstructured way, and all of a sudden status update starts to be a thing, and all of a sudden Melissa Perry talked about this in our conversation in our previous episode with her. She tells a story about Spotify. She was helping Spotify at that time, and they were like cowboy mode. And she came in and she said, "Look, basically," she said, you can't run your company like this because you're starting to be too big right now." And implemented basically some more structure in a way, and it was night and day according to her, and also some people at Spotify. So that does resonate. I want to double click on something, Ninni. So you mentioned 1 to 4 markets. How do you navigate prioritization when it comes to that? Because I can imagine, and you said it yourself, there's different market needs, different competitive landscape. So how do you currently go about prioritizing whether you do something for Denmark or something for Norway? And how do you navigate that political landscape?
We try to stay true to the platform thinking. So what we build needs to scale to a lot of markets. So in most cases, scale versus custom, more markets versus custom, scale wins. But that's easier said than done. So if you look at it from an infrastructure perspective, there are completely different payment infrastructure in the 3 countries. On the payment rail side, where we have different rigs. In more daily product work, there's a balance, a difficult balance between It depends on what the goal for the company is. To now in Vipps MobilePay, we are on a journey to reach black numbers. So profits is extremely important at the moment. We've always been obsessed with customer centricity. This is our DNA, and we cannot deviate from it. And we learned it over like so many times that every fuck up we do in Vipps MobilePay is because we haven't stayed true to simplicity and actually doing everyday simplification for people. We launched a telecom subscription a couple of years ago. We failed massively. Like, was it simpler and better than competition? Absolutely not. We launched you could use Vipps in a terminal in a physical store, but it was so cumbersome. You had to scan it, open the Vipps app, scan the QR code, press the 5 button before you could pay to get the push notification. So simplicity is so profits, simplicity, and of course a lot of consideration to be taken into account. So I don't have a simple answer to that question. What do you prioritize? But it is difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm curious about something you said now, because you meant, was this all these ideas that you're arguing that failed, was this before the merger? So is this Vipps time, cowboy mode? Well, I don't want to say it's cowboy mode, but taking your words for it. But was this in a time where decisions were made faster, or?
Yeah, the examples I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, the example. So I'm
less, I guess, afraid of doing mistakes, or we have tried, and that is actually a cultural attribute or a culture trait that I think we have continued or brought into the new organization, which I think is really good. And it's that fuck up. It's okay to do mistakes, but maybe it has a bit of a bigger impact when you fuck up in 4 countries than one.
Absolutely.
In a way.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm wondering. Because you had that culture, you did try these things, and you were quick, apparently, to try those things, and therefore you were quick to learn. And I was wondering, in a large organization, perhaps you would have taken more time, therefore you would have taken more time to learn. So that's also
on the other hand, when you have platform, so we have one app, so we merge into one technical platform and one user base and one merchant base. It's taking products and experiments out to a fraction of the users, which we try to do a lot, is also very fast learning. So in our everyday life, I think we have stick to that test fast, fail fast mentality.
Yeah. And that's great. Thomas from Sparebanken, he was here on the pod as well, and he was telling us about precisely about how they approach really quick testing, shipping to X percentage of the users, and how they ditch ideas all the time, according to Thomas. So that was a
one thing I came to think of is speaking of priorities, and when you have a platform with 12 million users and 400 merchants in your network, the opportunities are quite big. And so we had a laugh about it in the organization the other day. That's like, there has been a massive inflation in business cases, because every idea you have on the list, you can multiply with a lot of users. And even with a low revenue per user or low unit profits, it become a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that must be, Yeah, no, and so if there's anyone experiencing the same, what would your advice be in terms of how should they approach those conversations around those multiple business cases? Everything looks good, like what do you do? Do you go back to your North Star and take that as sort of the guide to, okay, guys, this is a great idea, yes, great business case, but this is why we're doing this and this is the strategy. Like, how do you approach this?
I have a very strong belief in that you need to, there's a lot of product leaders or a big discussion on like stick to what stick to core, stick to what you're good at, and not don't deviate too much, don't go too don't move too far away from the core because you will fail. I don't agree with that, but I think you need to understand what made you succeed with core. Like, what is it that you are like you cannot compromise on? And for us, and I touched upon it, it is the simplification part. So every business case just completely fails if you need to, if you don't get the user engagement, right? So the price is irrelevant if you don't engage in a platform like ours. If you don't engage the users and if they don't want the product, then the business aspect is irrelevant, right? So so that having those, and in our organization we call it product principles. We've always had product principles that we have stick to very and not compromised on. So that
what are those principles, Ninni?
I think now we redefine them a bit, but we used to have this the simplicity thing I said as an example. We had this: if it's not simple enough, we won't do it. It just builds on what I said. But we weren't really true to it. And the examples I mentioned with the QR and terminal, it wasn't simple. So we failed.
Is that because? Sorry to cut you off, but is that because you haven't defined what simplicity means for you guys? My question is, let me just contextualize it. So if you have defined the principle that simplicity is our principle, we won't do anything that is simple enough. And looking back and considering what you're telling me, you still did things that turn out not to be simple, then there might be something about the definition of simplicity.
Yes, or that we weren't really honest with ourselves in building these things along the way. Yeah. And we've been laughing a lot about this because we have a lot of these failed product launches, which is good, and we are really proud of them now.
I love that.
To be honest, before we launched, we kind of knew it, but it's the lock-in effect or the sunk cost fear. We came so far. Yeah. And especially the Vipps Mobile story, I can share that openly because I was the PM for that product at the time, and what the gut feeling before launch. But then we had spent a lot of months on doing it, and
I know the feeling. Yeah, that is it's tough. It's difficult.
Yeah. So it wasn't about the definition. We stretched a bit. So it might be a relevant product for some people. It might make their life easier, but you could also. But there's a lot of learnings.
Yeah. But tell me more. So simplicity. Is there any other principle that you want to share that drives product development at Vipps?
We had I touched upon the other one, which is scalability. Yeah. We used to have, and this is interesting, I'm talking about the old ones, but we used to have a principle where we said when users and merchants' interest, I don't remember exact formulation, but it was basically saying that when we need to choose between user interests and merchant interests, we choose the users. An example of that is we have a payment product, a recurring payment product, so you can pay for your subscription monthly with Vipps. Yeah. And then we recently had a big discussion. Should we make it really, really simple for the user to cancel the subscription in the app? And that is really good for user to have that flexibility to pause and etc. But for a lot of merchants, darker UX is quite lucrative, or some merchants see a benefit of just having these recurring subscriptions just go on and go on and go on. Yeah. And I think this has changed a bit over time, because before I worked in the user part of the company and now I work on the merchant side. So on the merchant side, we do all the e-commerce products. So we're serving the merchants and the user, both of them. So I think, to be honest, it is. So to take the conclusion first, we will allow the users to cancel the subscription in the Vipps MobilePay app. So we ended on that. But I think it's not as easy anymore. We don't have that product principle so clearly anymore because it depends. There's a balance, and also because we need to. Our merchants are our customers too, so it's putting them up against each other. I think it's a case-to-case basis.
Yeah, and of course it does become more complex if you go to multiple markets and if you have very different opinions and cultures and within the same organization. Then of course it's difficult to stick to those types of principles. Like it's classic sort of marketplace principles when we're gonna always prioritize supply and instead of demand, or the other way around. It's very typical in marketplaces, and then shit hits the fan when when the company takes a different direction. Those principles need to be revisited, and as you said, in some cases it might not apply. It was actually very interesting. Now I can think about it. We had Francesca Cortesi. She was the CPO at Hemnet, the largest housing marketplace in Sweden. They went from she was in the company from seed to IPO, and she was talking exactly about this. I just remembered she was talking about the fact that principles, when it comes to those principles of like prioritize this over this, it didn't really help her and her product organization much because of what you said, like case by case, it forces you to change and iterate on those principles.
Yeah, and I think a lot of companies, the last few years has been more difficult for considering macroeconomics and the focus on profitability and the focus on revenues has been harder. But we still stick to we need to bring simplicity, but if you can also apply simplicity to make sure that our merchants, which is also a customer, they need to see us as a trustworthy and simple partner as well. And so, it's a balance.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to a different theme, product strategy, and also some of your thoughts on other stuff that I have here prepared for you. You mentioned to me yesterday when it comes to product strategy, the power of the end state. Do you want to unpack that?
Yes, the power of a visual end state, and that's almost it might be a controversial statement, but we have learned that in our company, if we are to talk about the future, it's how when you have an open discussion in a room talking about the future, you can come out. I've learned so many times that what people have envisioned in their head when going out of that room is very individual. So what we have started doing the last few years in Vipps is actually to through a creative visual process define a lot of strategies and end state positions. So I have an example. So last year I was tasked with what could a potential marketing platform for Vipps be? And there are many angles to that. It's a huge, become a marketing platform, like social media platform, like Meta, and we had some very theoretical discussions about it. And making a lot of slides, etc. And then we included some UXers. We sat down and some PMs and some different people, and then we sat down and then we asked ourselves, what could potential concepts, what could potential products, services, and be or could be incorporated in the app, which makes sense for the user, we think would add value to merchants, think lastly that would add value to us. And then the creative process, and then we drawed it up and we presented it in the company. We don't know if we will go, we don't know if it wasn't it wasn't any answers, but it created a lot of engagement in the company. and it gave us a picture of it's like visualize the North Star in a way.
Yeah.
So after that, we've always applied that part of the strategy process. The visualization doesn't solve everything, but part of the process is to visualize your ideas and the future positions that you are taking. So for us, that's like kind of a key thing in the product, in the strategy.
It sounds it's very similar, very, very interesting by the way. It sounds very similar with like working backwards from Amazon to like envision the what's it called, like the press release, and then write it down and agree of what it is. And I really like, well, I like both, and perhaps now that I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking that both could work really well together. Because you have like a more visual end state of what it could be, and you have that workshop with the team and all that ideation going and those opinions and trade-offs and discussion. And then I feel that the press release compresses everything in sort of writing, which forces you to really articulate really well of what it is. So I'm thinking now on the spot that could be an interesting sort of approach. Maybe I'll try it.
I guess it's a bit controversial because there is a risk of a known risk. I think UXers recognize themselves in that when you show something visual to the board or to someone with decision power, it tend to be it can easily happen that it's kind of someone is saying that we will build it.
Yes.
But
how are you mitigating that risk today then?
I think you're not presenting the visualization of the future as a standalone thing. You are presenting it as something. I usually open the presentation when we talk strategy. I open the presentation with that. So this is where we want to go. Like this is kind of the North Star, and you get people engaged, and then you present the classical strategy deck where like you are looking to competitors and where you do have some understanding of the key trends and do have some understanding of market sizing, etc. But also bringing, where do we start? Like, so this is the vague visual dream, and then you need to take it down and say like, so this is what needs to be true to get to that stage, and this is where we will start with getting towards that goal. And the goal can change. And in Vipps someone has said that we have like no strategy, because we always had these positions that we wanted to take. We want to win e-commerce, or we want to win tap to pay, like get rid of your cards and your wallets now. You can just, we will be used in all payment situations. Like, so we had these positions, but the product areas have had a lot of freedom in deciding actually how to win that market or how to take that position. So we've never been handed out a detailed plan on how to get there, or never had a very strict framework for where to operate.
Yeah.
And we've been opportunistic. So we are, for someone it's challenging to, ooh, shiny new object over there. Let's, but it has a clear, it has some clear opportunities that we have a lot of freedom in the product areas. And we are jumping quite fast on the new opportunities that arise.
That's super nice to hear, and very, very refreshing, because it's not often you see like a larger organization with that mindset still. And actually that might be a follow-up question, because I'm just curious. Did you manage to keep some of that after the merge, that opportunistic way of working, or do you see yourself now falling more into a sort of a longer term established product strategy and having more difficulty iterating it?
No, I don't think so, but
good?
That is also, I think it's a result of the leadership, which we kept the CEO or Vipps MobilePay. The merged company has the same CEO as Vipps, and I think he represents something. He's key in that. I think the mindset that he builds to the organization is. It's not. It's that we need to grab. Maybe we should have grabbed even more, and because he has a really good point that in order to really. There's quite a lot, if you consider a funnel, there's quite a lot of ideas that need stupid or wide range of ideas and potential products or like opportunities that needs to go into the funnel in order to succeed for having someone really successful coming out. So, and I don't think I agree with him that the strict plan, a 5-year plan, doesn't give you that.
No, I agree. Very good. Let me see. You also last time we spoke, we talked about the role or your views on the role of product managers and how it might have evolved a little bit, or maybe you changed your mind from like 5 years ago to now, or maybe not. Walk me through that. What do you think makes a strong PM, generically speaking?
I've publicly criticized, or I've publicly said a few times the last years that I think PMs have something to learn, or are especially two weaknesses. And of course, I'm being very stereotypical. But one thing is that we have a tendency of being very incremental in what we do and how we prioritize, because you have very easy access to the things that are very close to you. So if you have a product launched and you want to develop it, then it's develop it further. You go out on the street and talk to someone, or if you look at your Mixpanel dashboard, it's very easy to get the insights or to validate your ideas that are close to core or close to your product, because it's if you ask a user, then they would you like this feature in the product? Having the capacity and also I'm struggling. I think that's a challenge myself. Like in our everyday work, we are very focused on what we do, and really look at us from a bird perspective and say, how are we prioritizing the same thing, the right things? And it also relates a lot to the team typology you have. We used to have very many small teams in Vipps. And what it did, and now we're trying to organize it in larger areas. And what it did, it was extremely difficult to move people or mobilize around the bigger bets and gather around the common priorities. So I think the radical, like PMs, the trait of like thinking big is important. Thinking commercially. I think traditionally we've been very far from it. Has been product and tech, and it has been the business side of the finance department. We need to work closer, and it is part of your PM job to ensure how your product, if you are of course in the private sector, but to ensure that you are making money on your product.
Yes.
And then I think that a good PM is also really strong project manager, because you usually, there's a lot of people saying like product is very different from projects. Product development is different from project management. Both yes and no. Yes, in the sense that a project has a start and an end date, a product has a life cycle, etc. That one I agree about. But there is, with product management, what are you doing? You are a cross-functional team lead, right? So you need like structure, you need deadlines, you need a lot of those capabilities that a good project manager possess. And
Interesting. Very good points. And one follow-up question on this. If you, take yourself back like 4 years ago, Vipps, and think about the product manager that you would like to hire if you were hiring a PM. And consider yourself today, now, hiring for a PM. Is there anything that would be very different that you would look for?
Yes.
Can you walk us through what those differences are and why?
I would hire project managers. No. I think two things that it's not hasn't changed is the soft skills, the ability to foster healthy, good teams. I mean, if you have a team of 8 and you're not successful in bringing them together and create a good atmosphere, then those 8 people are not producing and giving efficient results. So that is an extremely important thing as a PM. PM is very often a glue in a team. The second is experience in hiring, experience with actually software development, having been close to development team, working in a development team, working with developers is extremely important in my view. I used to work in Schibsted before I came to Vipps with Aftenposten. And I had a PM role in Aftenposten, but I was sitting in a commercial department, having responsibility for insights, for strategy, I had the product ownership. But then when I needed something built, I handed it over to the IT department, and then there was a huge backlog of different initiatives across the department. And there was this 2 hours meeting a week where we had to prioritize across and with 500 stakeholders in that meeting, or exaggerating a bit, at least 30 people kind of selling in why. So you get the point. So the tech part. What I would do differently, what I would look for now, it's more it's building on what I said with the commercial theft. Extremely important. Also, but Vipps was also in a different 4 years ago. It was all about growth. So it's also like what phase is your company in when you hire? I think some skill sets are universal, but also like what is important for your company now, right? So the commercial aspect is important. And the strategic part, maybe hiring for PMs are difficult because we expect a lot. We expect them to be 360 PMs, right? Good on strategy, long term, short term, excellent, efficient, really good on insights, right?
Yeah. Unicorns. A lot of times. Ninni, this was so great. Really insightful. It's so nice to talk to you all the time. The few times we talked, it's really, really interesting. I love the experience, the takes. So thank you so much for joining the podcast. One last question before we wrap up. If you were to go back and be able to talk to Ninni before the merger, because I think this is a very interesting journey. One advice, you can only choose one advice, what would that be?
Relax, take a chill pill. It will sort itself out. No, but change is difficult for everyone, right? At some point, no one knew their new team. No one knew if they were getting that position or not. No one knew what will we lose our job as a result of this merger. How evaluated am I? Like, how important will I be for this new company? Where will our strategy take us? Are we going out in Europe now, and our own markets will be less important? A lot of insecurity in the merger. And So stay cool, and in general, I think summing up a lot of the topics we said here, I think pragmatism in all aspects of product is extremely important. So in facing cultural changes, in facing business decisions, in facing a lot of challenges.
Well said. Thanks for sharing. All right, Ninni, see you next time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Make sure you subscribe to my newsletter so you don't miss out, and see you next time.